Hey, what's up, everybody? Good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Victorious Ones podcast, the place where gaming meets comics, meets sports, meets movies, as well as inspiration. Of course, I'm your host, King Von Jr. Jr. You can follow me on social media on X, or rather on Twitter, as I still call it, at 301 King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Twitter page at Victory Pod One. I'm also on Instagram at Mr. King Von Jr. You can follow the show's Instagram page at Victorious Ones Podcast. I'm also the social media producer for the not no longer unpopular beat, but excuse me. I'm also the social media producer for the Perfect Plex Talk Radio, on Mondays at 6 p.m. hosted by friend of the program, Mike Knox. And so, without further ado, I'm going to talk about, in terms of the week in the week in culture, as well as just the week in wrestling. I'm kicking things off. Of course, I want to say that I definitely had the privilege to go to after party for Otakon 2025, which is the anime convention here in Washington D.C. So I went to Saturday night, Saturday night Otakon after party. Even though I wasn't at the event itself, but I still at least want to support some type of cosplay adventure, whatnot. And so I can, of course, shout out to Plus Ultra Entertainment, for great, for great brunch karaoke on Sunday. Man, like I said, it was amazing. And always have a great time, whenever I support them. So of course, cheap plug, follow them at Plus Ultra Entertainment. But yeah, other than that, as far as the weekend wrestling, I'm going to talk about the impact of of this ESPN deal, with WWE, going beyond the obvious when it comes to your wallet, in terms of what it could mean from a brand standpoint. I'm also going to cover the weekend wrestling as far as John Cena being set to face Logan Paul at Clash in Paris as one of his last opponents on this farewell tour. Not the biggest fan of it, to be honest with you, but I guess considering the cards WWE has been dealt, I guess that's whatever. I just feel some type of way about it. But I'll share those thoughts a little bit later. But like I said, just giving the rundown. Like I said, Cena's going to be facing Logan Paul. We're going to talk about what happened on Monday Night Raw, as well as NXT. You know what I mean? And it was definitely one of the best NXTs. Definitely one that's going to go after the ages, especially the Nia versus Lash match. I'll talk about in a moment. But yeah, so as far as that, I'm going to kick things off with SmackDown with within the weekend wrestling itself. So now we see that Logan Paul has the rare honor, distinct honor, if you will, of being one of Johnson's final opponents. And Cena accepted Logan Paul's call out on SmackDown. In exchange that also sets in motion Cody Rhodes versus Drew McIntyre. And so it's pretty clear that WWE's moving forward with John Cena versus Brock Lesnar after what happened with SummerSlam. And however, WWE also made a very surprise pivot as they lined up Logan Paul as the next opponent on John Cena's farewell tour. And so, so the altercation between them led to a tag team match involving Cody and Drew. And and the thing is, even though Cena versus Logan is set in stone, which I'm not the biggest fan of, WWE clearly indicated that Drew McIntyre is going to be the upcoming challenger for Cody Rhodes' WWE Championship. And so SmackDown went off the air. We saw Drew McIntyre, leaving Cody unconscious, after holding on to the champ's title. And so like I said, we saw that Cena versus Logan, and Cody versus Drew is definitely on the horizon. And so Cody and of course Cody Rhodes, John Cena, defeating Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul by way of disqualification. after Logan Paul hit Cena in the groin. After him with low blood. But as far as that, then of course, other things that happened on SmackDown, we had Tala Tonga and JC Mateo defeat Motor City Machine Guns, by way of pinfall after Tala Tonga choke slam Chris Sabin. And so Sami Zayn defeat Solo Sikoa by way of pinfall with the folding press. Charlotte Flair defeated Chelsea Green by submission with a figure 8 leg lock. Obviously, and before the match, Chelsea Green crashed Alexa Bliss' birthday celebration. Sore loser. But other than that, Aleister Black promised to exert violence on Damian Priest in a pre-tape vignette. So I like how that feud is further escalating. So like I said, I definitely look forward to seeing that. And I think that Aleister Black's going to bring the very best out of Damian Priest. You know what I mean? So and I'm glad to see that this return is eventually really going to pay off in Aleister Black's favor. And so next up we have Monday Night Raw. I don't want to sound like I'm just kind of breezing over things, but and of course, by the way, thank you very much for those that are watching by way of Twitter, and of course, for those who want to watch by way of YouTube, is youtube.com/@VonResper Jr. Please make sure to like and subscribe for more great content. And so like I said, move forward when it comes to Monday Night Raw. On a not so great note, Naomi is not cleared to wrestle because, as a matter of fact, Naomi was cleared to wrestle, which ultimately led to a match being canceled on Raw because unfortunately Naomi has sustained an injury, so like a medical issue that they will not disclose for the time being. So we're just kind of like, just left with questions and with a bunch of, with just a cloud of mystery, if you will, as it pertains to Naomi's status. And hopefully we still get to see Naomi versus Stephanie Valkyrie at Clash in Paris, because clearly they have been teasing it, even before the SummerSlam match. So there's limited details that emerged on Naomi's canceled match on Raw, and so the thing is, it was a previously advertised match, which unfortunately did not take place. And the thing is, Naomi was set to defend the title, by way of SportsIllustrated.com. It says that Naomi was set to defend the title against former champion Io Sky, but WWE announced on social media that Naomi had not been cleared to compete. I remember that. And so then on Twitter, they say tune in tonight for continuing coverage on this developing story. Then we see instead Io Sky lose to Roxanne Perez in singles action, which eventually led to a frustrating backstage exchange between Io Sky and former Damage Control partners Asuka and Kairi Sane after they tried to interfere to help her. And we saw that Asuka was crashing out on Io. Because at first, Io seemed like she was bigger than the group and whatnot, whatever. But yeah, like I say, Asuka was like, enough is enough. But that's another story. But the question is, what was the reason for the switch? It says, according to Fightful Select, details regarding Naomi being out of action were kept very quiet backstage on Raw, and that talent didn't even know what happened with her for WWE to pull the match. So even those in the locker room are left with as many questions as myself. So it says, however, the report states that Naomi was still backstage at the show, despite not appearing on screen. And WWE sources were also reportedly happy with the replacement match between Sky and Perez. And the question is, when will Naomi return? Since Naomi is currently scheduled to defend the Women's World Championship against Stephanie Valkyrie on August 31st at Clash in Paris. Because Valkyrie won the opportunity by winning the 20 Women Evolution Battle World Lab, last month. So as far as that, they also featured Naomi's surprise cash in the Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley match to win the title. And of course, you did see that. Of course, Stephanie Valkyrie they interact with Io on Raw, where she said that Scott was the only person who was promised a title match. In a vague line, it did tease the possibility that Valkyrie may not be getting her match in the near future. So, but the thing is, I definitely would definitely like to see that happen. It started bad enough that Liv Morgan got injured and got sidelined and was missing the rest of the year. But yeah, just praying for a speedy recovery for Naomi. So that's what that is. Courtesy of SportsIllustrated.com. And we see that Karen Cross's contract negotiations with WWE fell apart, allegedly, unless they're doing like what they did with R-Truth, and like initially release him, but then eventually they're gonna have fan backlash to be like, what, it's time to put him back on, and put him back on it, and give him a whole new contract altogether. So yes, that's really what that is in terms of what happened with Naomi. And so next up, with everything else, so of course, like I said, everything else that happened on Raw. So we see that Seth Rollins and his crew, as they like to call it now, the Vision, deliver another violent message at the end of the next episode of Raw. But we saw that the World Heavyweight Champion, of course, the Visionary himself, the World Champion, was also on the receiving end of some pretty bad news. So as far as that, of course, we see that Seth Rollins was forced into clash in Paris with CM Punk, LA Knight, and Jey Uso in a fatal four-way match by way of Adam Pearce. Since Adam Pearce loves to create matches, like whether it's right on the spot or have a set the following week, or he is a master when it comes to setting matches up. His whole thing is, since his whole thing is, look, I'm gonna let y'all settle y'all differences right here, right now, within the match, to finally settle it once and for all. So that's Pierce's approach, and so, like I said, CM Punk and LA Knight, came face to face to start off Raw, as tensions were very much high. Tensions were definitely rising. Stakes were definitely high, if you will. Between both of them, after Punk caused a DQ during LA Knight's world title match against Seth Rollins last week. And so, before they could escalate any further, Paul Heyman interrupted with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed accompanying him. And so, and the funniest moment of them all was when Braun Breaker said that the CM Punk and LA Knight 47 and 40 respectively, which makes them a combined age of 100. So that's obvious Steiner math right there. And the thing is, like, he sounds more and more like his uncle, and he acts more and more like his Uncle Scott. It's just like, as time continues to go by, it's like you can definitely see more of that Scott Steiner in him. You know what I mean? And it's very comedic too. So as far as that, you can definitely tell that Steiner logic, that Steiner math. You know what I mean? And like I said, it just adds an extra element to the Braun Breaker's character. And so, of course, Bronson Reed finally, Bronson Reed finally admitted, acknowledged, no pun intended, that he is the tribal thief. If you want Roman's the tribal chief, Bronson Reed is the tribal thief, and it's very clear. Back-to-back Raws where he stole Roman's shoes. At this point, Roman's gonna have to come out in Crocs or slides. You know what I mean? Because it's like, come on, dude, like, really? And I'm pretty sure that that Bronson probably doesn't wear the same size shoes as Roman, but just for giggles, we'll go ahead and just pretty much play a rib, I guess, behind closed doors and just play it out in the storyline. And there was a meme where somebody said that the downfall of Paul Heyman needs to be studied because in one picture they showed Paul Heyman from the Bloodline era where he's holding both of Roman's titles. Fast forward to now, he's got both of Roman's shoes around his neck. It's like, man, talk about how the mighty have fallen, and so on. And of course, Monday Night Raw took place at the Center Videotron in Quebec City, Quebec. So, just to backtrack. But yeah, like I say, so as far as that, I'm going to get back to the match later. As far as other matches that happened, we have Dominic Mysterio and El Grande Americano, also known as the Kaiser, defeated Dragon Lee and AJ Styles by way of pinfall after Dominic used a loaded mask to hit AJ, allowing for El Grande Americano to roll up AJ for the win. Of course, we also had Sami Zayn defeat Rusev by way of disqualification because of Sheamus's interference. So as far as that, first of all, Sami Zayn pleaded with Sheamus to stay at the match, even though he initially agreed as a friend. He said the second the match was over, he become Rusev. Sami Zayn appeared to have had the match won solo and MFT, actually not even by way of Sheamus interference, because Solo and MFTs ran in and pulled Sami from the ring and attacked him. If Sheamus followed through on his promise and attacked Rusev after the match, and which led to another brawl between Rusev and Sheamus. So that's never in the story of saga between them. Well, then we have Roxanne Perez versus Io Sky. Your winner by way of roll up. Roll up is Roxanne Perez. So initially, Io Sky was upset with Nick about Naomi's injury caused her a title match. Roxanne interrupted, which led to the match, and then of course, initially Asuka and Kyrie, came and tried to help Io after the interference from Raquel, but Asuka and Kyrie accidentally cost Io the match. So of course afterwards, Io confronted confronted former Damage Control teammates backstage after the match was over, but Asuka shoved her before walking away. So that's when Asuka had a crash out moment. Excuse me. So next up, we have the Women's Intercontinental Championship match as Becky Lynch defends her championship against Maxine Dupree. So clearly Maxine went into the lion's den. She was the lamb that was fed to the slaughter. Because of course, in typical Becky fashion, she ends up winning by way of submission with a disarmer. It was a typical squash match. So then afterwards, Becky Lynch delivered a cheap shot to Natalia as Natty checked on Maxine. And side note, I feel that it amazes me that Jade Cargill got so much criticism, got so much hate after losing to Tiffany at SummerSlam, right? But it seems like they just let Maxine slide, So at least you can see Jade making strides. Look, you definitely tell that that she's serious about what she does and wants to grow and get better. But the hate that y'all give online to this woman is insane. It's ridiculous. It's very unfair and it's straight up a double standard. I don't mean to go off on a tangent and a tirade about this, but it's nonsense. Because, yes, is Jade on the same level in ring from a talent standpoint, from a skill standpoint, as Bianca Belair? No, not at all. In fact, Jade will be the first one to tell you, right? But it's funny how people want to amplify Jade's weaknesses in the ring but are completely silent when it comes to someone like Maxine Dupree. No shade to Maxine, but come on now. It's literally night and day, right? You know, these fans online are willing to give Maxine the pass to, fall on her face, trip over her own feet, pretty much, fail upward, but are merciless towards Jade. And I could tell by the look on Jade's face after that SummerSlam match. You know what I mean? And I think she even said something, on Twitter, like a caption. They said, "All right, y'all won." You know what I mean? Like, come on now. The same people who want to chastise Jade. No offense, I'm not in the, I'm not gonna be body shaming nobody, but come on now. Like I say, the same ones that want to chastise her, are some of the same dudes that look like Mr. Big Head on Rocco's Modern Life. But yet you have the audacity to open up the top and bottom lip to be overcritical of Jade. But yet y'all wouldn't even know the difference between a wrist lock and a wristwatch. Rest in peace to Brother Bronson. But yeah, like I said, I just just had to throw that out there. Just to make up for a time where I didn't really say too much about it. But yeah, you know what I mean. Like I see when it comes to Maxine, like, come on now. It's funny how how y'all show no mercy to Jade when it comes to Maxine. Willing to handle that with kid gloves. Somebody explain that to me. You know what I mean? When we had the likes of Maxine, Lana, Kelly, and so many others that clearly do not even have the same caliber of Jade's own talent, of her physique or anything like that. Even close to having Jade's over, but I digress. I just had to get that out there. And also, we saw that that Bailey had a vignette, vignette promo, whatever. She's in some type of room talking about, like she doesn't know what direction her career is heading into right now. Because she had missed WrestleMania, she didn't have a match at SummerSlam. And that's when she's like, look, at this point, I don't know where my career is going. I don't know where I'm headed. After all these years of being one of the standard bearers for the women's division, is one of the four horsewomen. And if you want to talk about who's got the shortest end of the stick right now, it would be her. As much as everybody like champions for her being underrated and things like that. It's just like she's really not doing anybody any favors right now at the moment. So maybe we may see the return of the role model. Who knows? Only time will tell. But yeah, like I said, just had to just really had to get it out in the system, and so I know that Lyra was saying that she hopes that Bailey's doing all right. But at the same time, she doesn't really feel that sorry for her, because Bailey had cost her the chance to reclaim the Women's Intercontinental Championship from Becky at SummerSlam. So it's just like, all right, it's just like I feel bad, but I'm not losing sleep over it. That's pretty much Lyra's approach. So now, so not only that, we also saw that Rhea Ripley confronted backstage, and asked if she could actually trust Asuka. Of course, Asuka and Kyrie, and then of course Io told Rhea to stay out of it. And apparently that there's talks that Rhea is not in talks of as much of like a significant storyline right now, or even much like a title, storyline involved in a title, whatever. It's just like, come on now. Rhea is one of your franchise players. Like not only for the women's division, but just for the roster in general. And you mean to tell me that that, that you don't really have anything lined up for her right now. Like, come on now. This is the woman who was on the cover of 2K24. You know, of course, 2K24 along with Bianca, as well as Cody. Separate covers, but still at the same time, like, come on now. She's someone who's like one of the higher end caliber, sort of stars in the entire company overall. Period. So it means like I said, Rhea is way too valuable, to just be left with really not much going on. And also, of course, let's go back to the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. We have the fatal four way. Not fatal. Actually, it was a tag team match rather. CM Punk and LA Knight defeated Bronson and Braun Breaker by way of disqualification. Of course, as Seth Rollins ran in late in the match and attacked CM Punk. Then Jey Uso ran in to save Punk and LA Knight. But of course, before the show went off the air, Adam Pearce told Rollins that he had to defend his title against Jey Uso, LA Knight, and CM Punk at Clash of Paris in a fatal four-way match. And of course, Punk and Knight, in LA, continue to exchange words, before the start of the brawl, and that left the opening for Seth Rollins, Bronson and Braun Breaker to run in and take it all three. And of course, they finished their attack with Seth Rollins hitting the curb stop, on all three of his future opponents. And so we see that apparently that the group finally has a name. It's called Vision, whatever. But I digress. Anyway, that's it when it comes to Monday Night Raw. And so now I want to talk about NXT. And when I tell you, I want to talk about the clash of two female titans, two kaijus, if you will. And Ava made sure to get this match out of the way immediately, because this was not my bingo card. I did not expect it, but the opening match was Lash Legend versus Nia Jax. And no titles, just chaos. So both of them look great. Like I said, face card always approved, and so it's definitely what I like to call the Big E special. Of course, we all know, many of us know what that line is and that mean. Say whatever you want to, but yeah, anyway, like I said, of course, we saw that. This is definitely a great opportunity for Lash Legend to prove herself against a proven veteran NXT alumni like Nia Jax. And so it's definitely a great way to elevate her. Not sort of passing the torch almost. If you were not saying that Nia's path to prime, nothing like that, absolutely not. But but to have this seal of approval speaks volumes, and especially with how impressive Lash Legend was at Evolution when she eliminated Nia. And so clearly, that set Nia off. After that, and she just had her guns aimed at Lash, and so this is how we got to where we are now. Especially with last week, we have they were fighting all throughout the show, and so that's got to a point where Ava had to finally put her foot down and just get this out the way and let them just let them fight. So like I said, of course, NXT starts off immediately, like I said, with Lash versus Nia, and Nia took charge early, and she like I said, she put Lash in the corner with shoulder blocks, but of course, eventually Lash fired back with not only shoulder blocks but also a slap. Then we saw Nia do something I had never seen her do before, put her in a guillotine. And even though the body scissors were applied, Lash Legend still got her up and rammed her into the turnbuckle really hard. So then Jax throws out the ring. Of course that Cena momentarily, like you just had the advantage momentarily. Then of course, eventually, Lash Legend catches with shoulder blocks against the apron, and then of course the body slam is blocked with elbows, and then Nia throws out the apron, and of course catches a haymaker. You know, catches a haymaker from Lash. And when I say that Lash knows how to throw those haymakers, she knows how to throw. Um, not only that, but she, smash in the face with smash her face on the turnbuckles, to the turnbuckles a whole bunch of times, and then of course then she finally did her move. I want to see some sort of Lash out. I mean, like the way that Lash picked up Nia, just had her stretched out. Like the way that she had Nia carried Nia on her back pretty much, and stretched out and slammed her. I was like, oh my gosh, like really, man. I mean that was that slam that Lash gave Nia when like look, that's that slam that she gave her when she had to pick her up like this. I was like, oh my goodness, like, whoa, like that was highly impressive. Um, so I was, and then, of course, after that, of course, they go off the ropes, leaping back elbow. Lash, is big, it's a splash, covers for one, and of course, they do double lariats, and both of them are knocked out. And I mean, this was definitely the highlight of the night. If anything for me, the match of the night for NXT. We also saw Nia Black clutch. Like saying as Lash was able to break free, and of course hit him with the right hook. Then of course Nia hits him with the Samoan drop. Like I say, just over and over. Like it was worth it. You know what I mean? And of course also some fight against the barricade. As far as that, it was just constantly going back and forth. And then as Lash Legend, picks up Nia, it's like over by the announce table, as Booker T and Corey Graves, of course they stood up and got the way, which was smart for them. And they were smart enough that they knew, like I said, they knew to get out the way of that, because that was just chaos. But yeah, like I said, of course, so the thing is, Lash, I guess looks like she was getting ready to give Nia a follow-away slam, but Nia counters and falls on top of her through the announce table. You know what I mean? But at the end, as Lash tries to pick up Nia, she tries to pick up Nia again for powerbomb. Nia falls on top of her, and then gets back to the middle rope and delivers the Banzai drop for the 1, 2, 3, or rather for the Annihilator, if you will. So after that, we see the Dark State being interviewed backstage. Of course, getting ready for their getting ready for the 8-man tag match against Obafemi, Trick Williams, Javon Evans, and Moose. And we also saw Chelsea Greener and Secret Harvest arrive to scout some new talent. And of course, she dismissed Women's Champion Kylie Armstrong and Carmen Petrovic. And of course, they ended up getting scared off by two dudes. Doing the best low budget Twisted Sister impression. Somebody said, if you want to, some type of 80s airband looking thing. I don't know what that was with the wigs, but whatever. Anyway, we have Charlie Dempsey versus Joe Hendry, and the winner of this match, of course, Joe Hendry. And so of course, after that, we see that Logan Parker and Kalani Jordan getting ready for their match. And we see Jenny Parker roll up to remind them that she is next as far as NXT Women's Championship goes. And so, of course, we also saw that Josh Briggs, made his way and got on the mic. And so he said the crowd booing him meant nothing because he sees what they cheer. He says, Mara said he came back for him. All he cared about was playing in the NXT Championship. And of course, Josh said he tried to be a good friend and try to make more a champion. But he failed because he lived by a stupid code of honor, and there's no honor in NXT. Um, and so as far as that, and of course after that, Inamar comes in. He says, Josh Briggs, how do you say it in English? He's a professional, call him jackass. But yeah, and of course that's when his chance started ringing. And of course, including next up, we're going to have a Philadelphia street fight. As well, know that that there are no rules, and he blindsides Briggs and sends to the floor but cuts him off the turnbuckle. And so afterwards, Inamara chops Josh Briggs to the floor. He hits a diving splash into a crush. And so, of course, so clearly, it's definitely made official that we're going to have Inamara versus Josh Briggs. And so, of course, we saw that that Jordan Grace had a sit-down interview. She admits that Blake Monroe was right, that she spent most of her life avoiding mirrors. And it's not that she doesn't think that she's beautiful. She just has a hard time seeing it, and she fights that voice in her head that she'll never be good enough no matter how hard she tries. And Jordan Grace said that she thought she could understand Blake Monroe, but now she sees they share the same weakness and feels the need to tear other women down to stand taller. And as Jordan Grace calls him, the little Jordan's watching, she says to remember that real strength doesn't feed on someone else's weakness, and that she's going to step to the ring with like a heat wave to remind everyone that there's no one way that a champion looks. Then we see Blake Monroe in Ava's office when Ava informs her that she's got face-to-face with Jordan next week to set their match. I was like, oh, and then of course with the recap of everything happened on TNA Impact, we see fellow influence being interviewed backstage. As Fallon Henley cuts off JC Jane and says they've already beaten Kalani Jordan and Lola Vice. There's nothing to fear. And JC Jane takes a shot at her for answering her question and tries to put a positive spin on it. Is taking some, to take some contenders out of the mix. And so we see that, that these are some of the, telltale signs that federal influence is not going to last that long, plain and simple. So of course, then later on we see Obafemi telling his teammates that there'll be none of this can they coexist type of stuff, that they're not just four men, that the alpha males of their species, as Pat McAfee always liked to call Brock Lesnar the alpha male of the species. So of course Moose agrees. He says they don't have to be friends to beat Dark State. And Javon Evans says he's up for whatever, but Trick Williams just remains silent. And he steps forward and says they're all going to be taking L's to him soon enough. When Hank and Tank walk through the background, spraying for bugs. Then afterwards, of course you saw, but of course that was something else, whatever, whole nother thing. Anyway, we have Fatal Influence versus Kalani Jordan, Lola Vice. And of course, the winners of this match were Kalani Jordan and Lola Vice by way of pinfall with a split-legged moonsault from Kalani Jordan and JC Jane. That could be a sign of things to come, in terms of Kalani taking JC's title. Then we have Alba Fire versus Kendall Gray, and the winner of this match is Alba Fire with the KLR bomb. So we also have, finally we have, of course we have Chelsea Green, complaining to Ethan Page and Piper Niven, that she's got migraine, and as they discuss their problems with the Olympians. Then Chelsea Green wants to sign a peace treaty between Canada and the United States, and Ethan Page has a connection, connection they can call and to get it done in Philly next week. So definitely looking forward to that. And of course, we also Susanna Abrams standing by Ash for Elegance, personal assistant, tells JC that she's been on the phone with Santana Morella, and she's going to have to defend her TNA Knockouts championship against both Masha Slamovich and Ash by Elegance, formerly known as Dana Brooke. So as far as that, and not only that, but it's Chelsea Green and Ethan Page are scouting, but of course Ethan, excuse me, sorry about that. Like I said, of course, like I said, with the backstage with Tavian Heights, she says he appreciates Kendall Gray, but but she's not his pick, and so of course, Tyra May still picks All Ego up with a waist lock, but slips out and runs away. Then she has a German suplex on Piper Niven on Secret Herbers. Then Tavian throws Paige back, Ethan Page back in with her as she used to German suplex before celebrating with Tavion. And so we said JC Jane be greats fatal influence when she ends up in Ava Rain's office. And like I said, it's only a matter of time before fatal influence is officially history. So clearly see this building up more and more. And so of course in the main event we have Dark State versus Javon, Moose, Oba, and Trick. So chaos start off at the jump, and as we sell things down, to Javon Evans on sugar, since young OG lit him up, as he usually does. But like I said, and of course we also saw that that Oba Moose came in, of course to the enforcers, if you will. Then of course Oba Finney power bombs Osiris Green over the rope, sails onto the floor. And so, and of course, we see that we see a Team Oba having the advantage over Dark State, and so of course we saw with some slam. The thing is, I like the chemistry that that Oba and his team have, in spite of the differences, and of course I like how how Trick it's just a natural entertainer anyway, but but other than that, like I said, unfortunately Dark State ends up winning by pinfall with the 4-man toss of powerbomb on Javon Evans, in which is their team move shield powerbomb, if you will. And so after the match, Hank and Tank come to ringside and attack the challengers for Heat Wave as a brawl ends up breaking out. So we saw that Javon Evans was laid out with an elbow, and of course, so saw a breaking ball drop kick from Sugars, and Dark State take the momentum, back while Trick Williams just looked on. But yeah, the winners of this match, Dark State, as they clearly took advantage of of the lack of cohesive, took advantage of those 4 different egos, pretty much. And so, like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to what Heat Wave has in store. And also another thing I want to talk about is, the other side of this deal with ESPN with WWE. And, for a long time, WWE has been trying to moonlight as another sport to be covered by ESPN, even though they've had connections with ESPN for years and years and years. But for this to be cemented, as an official deal, if anything, that just speaks volumes. And so, WWE, as a matter of fact, I wrote about this when it came to that TKO article. Ever since today's events, WWE has always been looking for some type of legitimacy and to be respected by the mainstream more and more. So now they're partnered with the ultimate mainstream sports platform juggernaut of all time, ESPN. And so so the thing about it is that of course moving forward in 2026, the Peacock content, WWE content, everything like that, it's going to end up moving over to ESPN. We all know about $30 charge, and and all the pay-per-views or PLEs are going to be on there, WrestleMania included, and whatnot. And so so I looked into it. For a minute. So after there's more details on the new ESPN app that carry the PLEs. And so, of course, as was previously reported, ESPN acquired the rights. Sorry about that. ESPN acquired the rights to WWE's premium live events, PLEs, in a new 5-year deal that will see shows streamed on the new ESPN app starting in 2026. The company also issued a press release with more details about the app, which is apparently going to be launching later this month, August 21st. And so the new platform, which is going to be integrated into the ESPN app, will provide fans full access to ESPN's suite of networks and services, including live WWE and UFC events. So so ultimately, this has been the end game of this UFC deal, along with allegedly, getting UFC out, out of some debts as well, apparently. But the thing is, this apparently is going to be the end game, in terms of this whole merger with TKO, because UFC is under the TKO umbrella. So of course UFC's shown on ESPN. So clearly, this has been a long game this whole time. And the thing is, the debut's going live to kick off college football and NFL preseason, U.S. Open, international soccer, or early stages of the WNBA and Premier, lacrosse playoffs. And so the service, branded as ESPN DTC, has 2 subscription plans. The standout is the unlimited plan price at $30. So that's the unlimited plan. That's what everybody's been having issues about. And so with $30, that's going to grant full access to main ESPN channels, from regular ESPN, ESPN2, ESPNU, the usual suspects. ACCN, ESPN News, ESPN Deportes, of course, ESPN on ABC, ESPN Plus, which is part of the Disney, the Disney Pack bundle, and Hulu and everything like that. And so, and the thing is, of course, there are over 47,000 events each year. And so, of course, we're going to have studio shows, original programming, on-demand replays, including access to WWE coverage as well, pay-per-view analysis, and documentaries like the 30 for 30 series. And so, of course, as a large promotion, fans can also bundle the ESPN Unlimited plan with Disney Plus and Hulu for $29.99 a month for the first year. So, for the first year, fans can get the ESPN Unlimited pack with Disney Plus and Hulu, the same price as this whole WWE thing. And so it says subscribers will also have access to ESPN's major studio shows from SportsCenter, NFL Live, the Pat McAfee Show, as well as College Game Day. And WWE and the UFC will be featured prominently in weekly recaps, preview specials, and live event coverage. So with this deal, WWE is going to be recaps. They're going to have special previews and live event coverage. Oh, so that means, and the thing I'm looking at, does that mean that apparently they're going to have ESPN sideline reporters interviewing wrestlers after the match, or whatever the case may be, something like that. So that's one of the things to think about, factor in as well. And also because ESPN is ultimately under Disney, under the mouse, does that mean, like pretty much like, what does that mean for WWE's rating system? What does it mean for their brand? And as far as just like I say, it's just like how much are they gonna have to sanitize? How much are they gonna have to curtail because of Disney? Even though Disney has they get a little bit edgier when it comes to what they have on their channel, as far as like Daredevil, Born Again, and Deadpool versus Wolverine, stuff that's PG-13 to R. And so in terms of how WWE is going to pivot with that, this is like only time will tell. But also at the same time, I'm curious because I want to give a shout out to Brian H. Waters as well. And the thing is, he brought up a pretty good point. Maybe now with this merger, wrestlers, that they can be taken more seriously as stars in their own right. Like when it comes to, like greatest athletes, maybe with this ESPN merger, that they can include, WWE legends as well. It's the same way that the ESPN talks about Jordan, Tom Brady, Kobe, uh, you know, whoever it is, you name it, LeBron, whatever, you know what I mean, so on and so forth, endless list. Does that mean that in those same conversations, you could bring up the likes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Roman Reigns, guys like that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm kind of fascinated about. Not only about like say, like outside of the pricing, but in terms of what kind of impact does that have on the WWE brand when it comes to being seen on a level playing field, right? So so ultimately, that's what I'm looking at. Um, but it's and the thing is, it's like it's like now fans have to have multiple subscriptions, and I just definitely hate to see how those prices add up. It's already one thing, that we had to get Netflix for the sake of Monday Night Raw and Peacock because of the pay-per-views, along with along with the library of other content that they have on there. But now with ESPN, it's just like just like pretty much getting all the Infinity Stones all together, if you will, and just monopolizing. Um, and only time will tell. I'm not the biggest fan of having to pay that much along with all the other subscriptions, because it's different from from the days of just standard pay per view. It's not like not like we order, not like I order every single pay per view every single year. Um, I know that I know that my parents ordered WrestleMania for me. WrestleMania 14 and 15 back to back years. It was even a year. Like see, we ordered like I said, stuff like WrestleMania, Survivor, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series, but it's not like that. That was a regular thing frequently. And so with the climate that we're in, with all these different streaming services and things like that, if you're not careful, that definitely that could definitely take a strain on the wallets of the fans, and it just further solidifies how much more fans are being priced out. You know, but I digress. Other than that, that's like I said, in terms of like I said, ultimately I look at the impact, the long-term impact in terms of the legitimacy case. But yeah, that's it as far as tonight's episode. But now it's time for me to give birthday shout outs on this one, of course. Of course, just recently, August 11th, Chris Hemsworth turned 42. Viola Davis turned 60. And then, of course, on August 14th, NBA legend, greatest point guard of all time, the king of Showtime himself, Laker legend, Laker icon Magic Johnson, turned 66. On that same day, future WWE Hall of Famer, former multi-time tag team champion, former WWE champion, the legendary Kofi Kingston, New Day, turns 44. On the same day, Holly Berry turns 59. Bob Backlund turns 76. Steve Martin turns 80 on August 14th. On August 15th, Nipsey Hussle will turn 40. Bobby Caldwell will turn 74. Jeanette Reyes turns 36. On August 16th, Angela Bassett and Madonna both turn 67. On August 17th, Marcus Garvey course, I'm signing. Of course, I'm signing. Marcus Garvey will turn 138. On August 17th, Soraya, formerly known as Paige, turns 33. On the same day, Robert De Niro turns 82. So on August 17th, Marcus Garvey would have turned 138. Of course, Paige turns 33, and Robert De Niro turns 82. And so that's it when it comes to the birthdays. And before I go, I would like to give a word of wisdom: is that God doesn't just want you to hear His word or read His word; He wants you to experience His word. And of course, God can never be in second place. And don't be so quick to say what you think before you hear what God says, because what God says can cancel out anything that you have to say. And so that is my word of wisdom. And also remember that you are victorious, because greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. When you put God in first place, you don't have to worry about being in last place. Please make sure to listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else that you download podcasts. I'm also available on YouTube as well. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for listening. And may this day be the very best day of your life.